welcome to Down the Vale, episode 2. Myself, Conor McCloskey, as your host. We have Mr. Blair Cockburn and a very special guest in Mr. Marvin Bartley.
Oh, special.
Special guest.
Make me feel good today.
Davey and Dave didn't get that.
Oh,
so
did they not?
No.
Yeah, I like that.
I was maybe more scared of them, to be fair.
Definitely Davey.
They don't have the beaming smile that you had, so Davey just looked at me in a bad way for 90 minutes. So.
Oh, don't worry about it, mate. 3 years I spent with him and he looked at me like that every morning, so you're fine. Don't take it personally.
I'll try not to. He's warming to me.
Yeah.
It just takes a wee bit of time.
I'm sure.
Takes a wee bit of time. We are here in partnership with Taylor Roofs, housed in this kind of wonderful podcast studio as well. Taylor Talks Trades. You can check out all their stuff in the description box below, which our good friend Blair will sort later on.
No pressure.
He's a tech guy, I'm the face apparently. To be fair, I've been outshadowed today. So. Obviously, we'll just quickly tie into episode 1. It was Dave Black, David Martindale. How is your relationship with those guys?
Poor. Nah. Listen, brilliant guys. Both of them, obviously. Dave brought me into the football club and then made me assistant manager after I'd stopped playing. And, Dave, his rise has been brilliant. To see where he started when I came into the football club, just a passionate fan in and around it, to now be the CEO, it's kind of the things that dreams are made of. And if I'd have spoke to him at the start when I came into the football club, and said within 5 years or whatever it is, you're going to be in that position, he'd have probably laughed and walked off. Because he always seems to be laughing. But brilliant guy in work. I've met with Dave a couple of times outside of work as well, gone to watch football, etc. So yeah, I count him as a friend, not just a colleague. I think he's in that position almost where he's not quite accepted it in his own head what his actual role is. It's almost that kind of imposter syndrome to an extent, isn't it? That's the best thing to do though, because if you start to accept it, you start to give it the big I am, because he's in such a massive role within a football club. So yeah, imposter syndrome isn't always a bad thing. Listen, long may it continue because he's doing a really good job. I know it's difficult, obviously the club getting relegated last season, but started the season really, really well, and he's so positive and passionate about everything. Not everyone's going to agree with him. That's the way football is, but he's doing his utmost. Yeah, absolutely. Blair, do you want to go for it? Got 6 quick fires, Marv. We're going to just go straight in with these. Go on.
6 quick fires for our best number 6 ever.
Wait. We had this debate yesterday though. So I fired this in our group chat and said, who's our best ever number 6? So I did put yourself up.
Yeah.
Someone else did not put yourself up.
Dave.
It wasn't Dave. It was the man sitting to your left.
Oh!
Sorry, Marv.
He went with big Emmanuel Dorado from about 2002.
To be fair, you're in very esteemed company.
Yeah.
And some incredible number 6s.
Oh, okay.
There's also been some very ropey number 6s.
Yeah.
I didn't say you were the best. I didn't say you were my favourite though.
Who were the ropey ones?
Emmanuel Dorado, probably. He was class.
To kick us off, Marv, your best friend in football, who's that?
Wow, football friends. I'm at the position now where probably my best mate within the game was Charlie Austin. He's obviously non-league now down in England. But yeah, I would say he's definitely up there. It's difficult. I've been in a lot of dressing rooms and you can probably tell I'm quite a big character as well. So I stay in contact with so many different people. So having one best friend almost seems a little bit like nursery, doesn't it? But he's my longest friend within football. Let's put it that way.
Good man. An absolute legend of lower league football. I just felt like every day like soccer Saturday he'd be scoring somewhere. I like that. Next up, I've got his toughest opponent.
Oh, it's always a difficult one. I'd probably say Rogic. Up here, I thought he was absolutely brilliant. I speak about Callum McGregor a lot now and the things he can do, but probably being directly up against Rogic and realising how good he was with the ball at his feet and how well he protected the ball, but also how strong he was. He's built like a beanpole. And I thought, I'm going to run into this guy and it would just basically barge him over. And it didn't happen. Such a wonderful footballer. Hated playing against him, loved watching him play. But yeah, in terms of direct opponent, being a number 6, although you said I'm probably the 5th best number 6 for Livingston, having someone direct up against me would be Rogic.
Good choice. How, just curious, obviously that first season you came in, we obviously beat Celtic and came very close to beating them again just before the kind of COVID lockdown. In terms of coming up against a player of that calibre, how important was just basically clamp a player like that down in terms of getting that win?
I want to clamp every player though, whether they're good or bad. That's just the way I want to play football. But no, listen, you knew you had a direct opponent that you needed to get the best of them, or best over them rather, and then you probably have to do a little bit more for your teammate as well. Playing against Celtic and you're at Livingston, you're gonna have to do your job and somebody else's, or some of somebody else's as well. And we did that, to beat Celtic is no mean feat. You know, I know Davey speaks about budgets a lot and he gets a lot of abuse for it, but if you look at that game, it would have been, you know, chalk and cheese in terms of the budget. So, yeah, it's massively important. And I said you need a little bit of luck along the way, and, you know, we got that, and, yeah, it was, you know, a massive victory.
I think those budgets are getting even bigger to an extent now, aren't they? You look at Celtic's profit margins now, for example, it's at 75 million or something.
Yeah, it's, you know, playing the Champions League, and then, you know, the player trading model that everyone wants to get involved in, and they do it so well. Yeah. So everything's going right for that football club, you know, in terms of that. And listen, football's not played on a spreadsheet, we all know that. And, you know, you have to look down the road at Leicester winning the Premier League, you know, against some teams where they've been, you know, miles away from in terms of budget. But yeah, it's getting tougher, most definitely. But listen, you can always compete against those teams, and it's always about the teams in and around you. If you can beat them, then, you know, you're going to probably be looking up and trying to chase the teams above you than, you know, looking over your shoulder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next up, I've got, do you prefer playing home or away?
Do you know what? This is a really weird answer, because probably my favourite game that I've played in Scotland would be away at Tynecastle for Hibs. Not for Livingston when I scored, obviously, because that's scoring goals.
We'll come to that.
Scoring goals is what I do.
We've got a full page of it.
But yeah, you know, playing away, I would say. I enjoy, you know, that hostile atmosphere, and, you know,
is that feeling everyone's against you almost?
Yeah, exactly like that. And it's like siege mentality almost for you and your teammates. So yeah, I definitely enjoy away games probably more than home.
I knew that would be your answer. I had a feeling that you would just relish that siege mentality, that kind of atmosphere.
Yeah.
Thing, so. You've had a lot of them, but who's the best manager you've played under or worked with?
I think you say red card. You said you had a lot of them.
The Christmas night out.
Yeah,
that one down south.
Yeah, exactly. Oh wow, let's not speak about that. You know, listen, as you said, I played under some really, really good managers, and it's always very difficult to just say one. But for me, you know, coming into the game at the age I did, and having Eddie Howe as a coach and the manager was massive for me. A huge, huge help. And obviously he's going on now to, you know, be at Newcastle. So yeah, I'd have to say, if I had to pick out one, it would be him. But Paul Heckingbottom again was a brilliant manager. He's, in terms of being a coach on the grass, absolutely excellent. And I know Hibs fans look at him and don't really like him for what obviously how it ended at the club. But, you know, as I said, you know, I've played under many good managers, and I'd probably take a bit from each of them if I possibly could. If you're asking me to pick one, then yeah, it would be him.
Do you take bad stuff as well? Do you take bad stuff as well?
Yeah, you have to. You know,
you learn more from that side almost.
Exactly, because everyone knows what the perfect manager looks like. You don't have to be in a dressing room probably to realise what a perfect manager, because you're managing people at the end of the day. But there's definitely situations where you thought, well, you know, whether it's you directly involved in it or one of your teammates, and you think that could have probably been handled better. But yeah, you definitely take the bad bits as well when you try and, you know, mould it all together.
Yeah, fair. 3 p.m. or under the lights?
Under the lights, I'd probably say. Means I can have a nap in the afternoon. You know, 3 p.m's, got to walk the dog. Then I've got to have my pre-match at like 11, half 11. So under lights gives me a little bit more time during the day. But yeah, under lights is nothing better, is there? Yeah. You know, playing football, like obviously you guys are experiencing now the Friday night games. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant. Not for all fans, obviously, because some of them can't make it, but I'm being very selfish in that answer, yeah. So under the lights.
Last one I've got is extra time or straight to penalties?
No, I'm not taking a penalty, so we can just go straight to that. Go straight to that if
just
you
put
want.
that goal sheet down there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You can go straight to that if you want. Yeah, straight to pens, I think. Definitely if I'm playing. If I'm watching, definitely 100% straight to penalties. Remember I had a penalty shootout before and I just wouldn't take one. Yeah. Genuine, I just wouldn't take one. I'd be the 11th man, you know, and the keeper would have to force me maybe to potentially go ahead of him. Yeah, so yeah, straight to penalties if I'm watching, straight to penalties if I'm playing.
Do you remember Silver Goal, Marge?
Silver Goal?
Silver Goal.
Nah.
No.
What was that?
So it was early 2000s. We were discussing this the other day, right? So it was early 2000 where it would go extra time after 90 minutes. Mm-hmm. And if a team scored in the first half of extra time, the other team had until half time of extra time to get one back.
Right.
And if they'd never got one back, then the game would finish at half time and extra time.
Honestly, never.
No,
never ever. I probably played in games where that was actually a rule as well. I didn't know.
it was literally for maybe a year, and I think it was maybe... We've decided it was Euro 2000.
Oh, okay.
So it was back then.
Yeah.
So I think Trezeguet maybe scored in the final against Italy potentially, and Italy never got one back, and it finished at half time and extra time.
Wow. By the way,
would that does that add a wee bit of excitement though, almost, because it's
the
other team have to go, no?
Yeah, as a supporter, it definitely does adds excitement. It's a bit of panic stations if you're a player, though, isn't it? You can see the goal like a minute before half time or whatever. and it's going to be game over. But yeah, I don't even remember that. But yeah,
we've potentially made it up, to be fair. But
I feel like this is like one of these football Mandela effects, because I'm almost positive that the Trezeguet one was golden goal.
Oh, we have to check this out.
He scored, and I don't know. I feel like that needs
golden goal's a bit weird as well, though, no?
Yeah, golden goal was weird, but
that's incredible though. That's an incredible concept, and I have to say, like now as an adult, I'd be quite disappointed that they've done away with that.
Really?
I feel like the excitement of scoring that goal to take yourself through. Like, look at the celebrations when Trezeguet scored. It's like the whole stadium just went into this meltdown.
Yeah,
state.
but he's celebrating like that now, and then Vale would say, "Oh, he's slightly offside."
Well, I suppose.
Yeah, you're going to lose a bit of that excitement.
This bit
go. Yeah, exactly. golden goal. I prefer just if you can play extra time, play the whole thing. Especially when you're not playing. I don't care. I'm not running around for any extra time.
Exactly.
As a player, golden goal is brilliant.
Goal. Just call it a draw.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go home, lads.
We're going to touch on your career down south just kind of briefly. Obviously, it's a Livingston podcast, so we'll get to that sort of stuff. But on trial at MK Dons under Martin Allen.
Yeah.
I know you were only there for a short time before he moved on to Leicester City, but watched a few interviews with Martin Allen. Did you get the Martin Allen experience of him being the madman that he's perceived to be?
Yeah, I think that's just an everyday thing with him. A lovely bloke, but yeah, he was definitely crazy. He's called himself the Mad Dog, so that tells you all you need to know. But yeah, it was brilliant being there. Being on trial, coming from a non-league team, and being in those facilities and everything else, for me was massive. And it's probably it was the first time I came across a dodgy agent, so to speak. So that's why that one didn't really go ahead. But yeah, in terms of being on trial, did well. Expected to sign. He went off to Leicester, so I'm thinking, oh no, here we go. And then a dodgy agent got involved and muddied the waters a little bit. But I wouldn't have the career that I have had, and worked with the managers I have had. Maybe if that would have gone ahead, so I don't look back with regret. But Martin Allen is definitely the Mad Dog.
I watched an interview with him a few years ago on Under the Cosh.
Yeah.
And he's sitting eating dog biscuits during the interview.
Yeah, honestly, what's going on?
His dog's just running about. He's like, I take the dog to training and stuff, and he's like, if you're going to effing do it, then do it. Yeah. He's like swimming rivers and everything else, and the boys are following him.
I think he lost the Leicester squad quite early, and he had them litter picking. I think they lost the game and he had them litter picking, and I think, from there it was kind of choppy waters for him, so to speak, in terms of remaining as manager. But yeah, he's definitely a different character, let's put it that way.
Fair. Don't really know what else to say on that, to be honest. But I know you didn't have too much time with him, but the man you just mentioned, Eddie Howe, you must have learned so much from being under his kind of stewardship. He was obviously linked with Celtic pretty heavily and then took the Newcastle job and in flying now as well. So.
Obviously, he was a coach when I first went in there. We had Kevin Bond. He used to work with Harry Redknapp as his assistant everywhere. And then he went into Bournemouth as manager, and Rob Newman. I think it's at Man City now, scouting or something like that. But yeah, Eddie was, had to retire early. So he kind of understood what it meant to still be a player, which I think is very, very important. Sometimes, managers go away from remembering what it's like being the other side. But yeah, brilliant. Always wanted to work with the players, always wanted to improve them. Then you got the, I think they got sacked, or Kevin Bond got sacked, Jimmy Quinn came in, and Eddie went to do the under-14s. So the only time we really used to see him, he used to obviously be bringing the kit in to get it washed, and then off he went, he used to have a quick chat, and then I think it was like New Year's Day one year, he'd been in administration, and New Year's Day he came in as manager, and he said the rest is history. But yeah, brilliant manager, was way ahead of his time in terms of analysing things and the way he used to present things. He used to do an awful lot of miles in terms of going to watch games. He had a couple of helpers as well. Jason Tyndall's still with him till this day, and a few others. So yeah, it wasn't just him, but yeah, as a manager, he was really, really good.
Tyndall's the real star of the show, to be fair. Like, man loves being in the camera. He loves it.
Honestly, man, he's always been that way though. Tyndall, he's always been that way, and they work really well together because half the time Eddie just taking the mick out of Tyndall, and Tyndall doesn't really care, but yeah, he loves being on camera and got his hair flicked.
He's got this like mine.
Yeah, exactly. And it used to be fake tan back then, but he's probably getting paid really, really well. Nice, that tan will be real. But yeah, listen, really, really good characters, and you need people like that, to work together. And Stephen Purchase as well, one of Eddie's ex-players, is there. So yeah, the three of them work really, really well together because they're all different. Yeah, all extremely different.
I'd say that he was linked with a kind of job up here. Do you think he would have suited Scottish football?
Yeah, I think he's a good manager, so he definitely suited it. He got very close to taking the job as well. So yeah, it would have been. Celtic obviously have gone on and got Ange instead. Didn't do too badly, did he? But yeah, listen, I know he's very, very close to taking that job, and it ended up being one or two things that kind of went wrong, and that's why he didn't accept it. And Celtic have moved on, and so has he. But he would have been a success, definitely.
Are you in his inbox when he's kind of getting linked with Celtic? Like,
yeah, I'll say yeah.
You trying to get a gig out of it as well?
No, I spoke to him. I did speak to him a few times. Obviously hadn't been up here. Obviously, he'd spoken to Peter Grant as well, who'd known from Bournemouth, and Peter had been up here. So yeah, I spoke to him on numerous occasions about the game and everything else. And yeah, I thought he was gonna take it. I really did. And then, as I said, a couple of things happened, and that meant he didn't get the staff together that he wanted, and then he just decided no, it wasn't for him.
Probably from an outside perspective, though, to both of you, it's probably a sliding doors moment for him that, he's decided for whatever reason not to take that job, but look how well he's doing down south.
I think he's done all right out yet.
Yeah,
let's be honest.
Exactly.
He's done all right.
Yeah, he won't be regretting
Newcastle
it.
in the Champions League and things like that, and
yeah,
working with players like Isaac and Bruno Guimaraes and people like that.
And another massive club as well, and a passionate club. I always say this about being down in England. When you're down south, there's a certain amount of passion from the supporters, and the further north you go, the more passionate people are, and you come to Scotland and it's just multiplied again. Do you know what I mean? So he, in terms of fan base and the real passion of supporters, it's as good as it gets for me in England, being with the northern team.
It does look a lot different though, like even if you're watching Match of the Day, for example, like I'm not picking on anybody, but Fulham looks a wee bit kind of
Arsenal's the same.
Lovely afternoon out and things like
yeah.
that, where, as you said, if you go and look at Newcastle, Sunderland, Middlesbrough, people like that further north that you go, it just is passion, it's life.
Yeah, exactly, it's life. And when I signed for Burnley, obviously being up north as well, it was that same sort of thing that such a high percentage of people in the local area supported Burnley. It's not the biggest of places, but you'd walk down the high street if you felt safe enough to do so. You'd walk down there and you see like a load of Burnley shirts, and all of the kids would be at soccer camps, and a high percentage would have Burnley shirts on. And like you said, it is life. That weekend, that game on a Saturday or a Friday, whenever it might be, that's what they look forward to. And then when that game's finished, again, they go to work, but they're working to go to football. Yeah. It's so important to them. Sorry, I tapped the table. That'd be fuming through there.
You'll be raging.
I was doing so well. But yeah, as you said, you're totally right. It is life to northern fans, where southern fans, listen, some of them are passionate, but there's a lot of tourists as well when you go to stadiums, and that's why it's quiet sometimes, because so many of them are just like a revolving door.
Yeah, absolutely. Carnage at Leyton Orient is what I've got written next on my list. So the Herns in general, we kind of know a little bit about them. Mm-hmm. More and more into Bichetti, which must have just turned things upside down there.
Yeah, because you've gone from the calmness of the Herns being involved. Things run as you expect a football club to be run. Absolutely brilliant, really, really good with the lads, and had a budget and stuck to it, and was so close to getting promoted, obviously losing to Rotherham in the final. And then things just suddenly turned when they sold the football club. And to be fair to them, they probably thought they took the club as far as they possibly could. We outpunched our kind of weight in terms of being as high as we were in that league, and they probably thought, hand it over. And to be fair, it changed. It was carnage. it was carnage. But one thing I'll say, and I always say this, that they put their money where their mouth was, and it was just misused by people that they trusted to use it better. Because they were paying ridiculous wages. The centre came in, a fullback had been at Liverpool and Sunderland, and suddenly he's at Leyton Orient, getting changed in this old porter cabin basically. Do you know what I mean? You're thinking, mate, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Then we heard what he was on, and I was like, right, that's why you're
Money
here.
talks.
Yeah, exactly. Again, another lovely guy, but yeah, it was just so much money wasted. As I said, our budget was massive. It was the biggest in that league, and was bigger than a fair few teams in the league above in the Championship as well. And it just went wrong. Just went wrong.
Was there a story? Was it Darius Henderson?
Mm-hmm.
Were you going to start with 10 one day?
Yeah. And do you know what? We had a reunion the other day. We went down to Ali Pali because obviously Matchroom owned that as well. So Matt Porter has sorted it all out for the boys. We were speaking about this. So Hendo, I remember he called the manager and said he's going to be late. And the manager's like, okay, how late are you going to be? So I'm in traffic. I'm going to be 10 or 15 minutes late, which would mean meant to report at 1:30, be there at 1:45. And then it got to 20 past 2, 25 past 2. We're going out to warm up and there's still no Hendo.
We thought that was you today.
No, that's Dave's fault for today. No, that was my fault. So then we were like, okay, what's happening with the team? The manager's like, don't worry, go out, warm up, come back in, everything will be sorted. So we warm up, come back in, you're starting to get changed, giving this final talk through the translator. And then we're like, there's still no Hendo. his shirt's still hanging up and his clothes aren't there. And we're like, what are we doing? He's like, let me call him. So they go and call him and comes back and said, we start with 10. And the lad's like, what? He's like, we start the game with 10 men. And we're like, mate, nah, you can't actually do this. You go to referee and say, we're going to start with 10 men. He's like, no, you're not. Like, come on, what's going on here? So he's like, right, no, we'll start. I can't remember who started. And then game's being played and all you see is like Hendo comes running out and it's like a Sunday league kind of thing where he's not got his shin pads in, you know, his lace is undone and he's got a shirt in his hand and he comes running out. And I'm pretty sure, if memory serves me correctly, the man just subbed someone as soon as Hendo was ready and just swapped him. And I'm just like, what's going on here, man? So yeah, that was one of the wild stories. You had the chairman coming down and saying that the centre needed to go up front, who's a left back I spoke about. Yeah, he's like, he needs to go up front, I pay him. That's when we found out how much he was getting paid. I pay him X amount of money, blah, 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 this league is rubbish, put him up front. Like, the rest of us are looking at it like, he's just said the league's rubbish. We're getting beat at half time and he's like, no, I put him up front. To be fair to the manager, he stood strong, didn't put him up front, went on to win the game, and then he sacked him.
Then lost his job.
Yeah, it's like, maybe should have put him up front and lost, he'd have been better off. So yeah, honestly, real crazy time. Yeah. I'll probably write a book about that place.
Blair, can we expect to see Matty Clark being pushed up front by Dave Black on Saturday afternoon at Queen's Park?
I think I'd be very, very stunned if that was the case.
And if it is, can you go and video it, please? Can you go and video Dave?
Yeah,
telling Davey to go and put Matty Clark up front.
That'll go down well.
I'm sure it would.
Any regrets about not playing internationally? I think we, through research, found there was maybe a chance you were eligible.
Yeah, so when I was at Burnley, eligible for Jamaica, so I sorted out all my passport and stuff, sent me to the embassy down in London and got it all sorted out. And there was a training camp in England, and they were due to, I can't remember who they were playing against, but the training camp was in England anyway. So having a few conversations, right, that's fine, I'll do that. And then I had a call from somebody saying, right, if this is to go ahead, we need X amount of your future earnings. So I'm like, on the phone, like, huh? Like, what do you mean? Have I heard this right? Like, obviously, there might have been a breakdown here in terms of what I've heard. He's like, yeah, so the way it works is if you to get a move now from Burnley, we take X, or if you sign a new contract at Burnley. And I'm like, hang on a minute. Yeah, I'm going to represent Jamaica, which I want to do. My parents are from there, it would have been a massive honour for me. But I'm going to pay for the privilege to give up my international breaks when I normally go on holiday. Yeah. I was like, mate, let's just park that there. That is not going to work for me. So, listen, I was very, very close to doing that. We actually had a boy called Dane Richards who was at Burnley at the time as well. Yeah. He was a Jamaican international. One thing I remember at Dane is he came on in one game and got subbed in that game as well by Sean Dyche, I think it was. He was terrible. A terrible player. But he was playing internationally. He was getting called up every camp, so he must have lost a fair bit of money through doing it.
That guy who turns up with his right boot and his left foot and stuff like that.
He was
imposter syndrome.
Yeah, very much that. That would sum him up perfectly. Not nice guy though.
Yeah. How was Sean Dyche?
Good. You get from him what you expect. In terms of what you see in his interviews, he's very straightforward. He's not as angry as probably what you would expect though, because I sometimes see him on the sideline and the way he speaks and all this sort of things. Again, a very understanding man. Like, personally with players, he was really, really good as well. But he had standards that he wanted and didn't do a lot of coaching. That wasn't really his forte, but he would stand and he'd watch it. And if he had to step in as a manager and say, the standard's not high enough in terms of what you're doing, then he would do that. But he wouldn't take an awful lot of training sessions. But I remember one day, I think someone would bottle the tackle in either training or a match. But anyway, we were in training. He used to make you wear shin pads in training. Train the way, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, exactly. Train the way you wanna play. And I think a player maybe turned their back or bottled a tackle when the ball had gone past them. So then he stood there and he said to his one of his coaches, kick the ball against me. So his coaches there like, what? And then this far apart, kick the ball against me. And he kicks it against him, just like a little side foot like you would expect. So, harder. And the coach is like, what? So he starts smashing the ball off him. He's like, see, my legs are getting red, but it doesn't hurt. That was Sean Dyche, so yeah, really, really good guy. But he's doing well as well, being at Everton and kept Burnley in the Premier League for as long as he did. Doing the same with Everton. Chalk and cheese to how he works kind of in terms of Eddie, but both very, very respected managers.
Blair, I know you wanted to touch on the kind of next part of moving north.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious. You are obviously such a massive advocate for Scottish football. Like, you're obviously kind of moved into this media side and very passionate, obviously, about our game. Before you moved up north to Hibs, did you have much of an inkling about the standard of Scottish football, what it was really all about? Probably beyond maybe what I imagine most English footballers imagine in terms of kind of Celtic and Rangers and that kind of side of things.
Yeah, do you know what? I didn't really have a view on it, if I'm honest. My brothers did, because, you know, they're a fair bit older than me. So they remember kind of like Aberdeen, again, being another big club and doing well. And I knew one or two players that maybe came up, but if I'm honest, I didn't really know too much about it. Actually, I had no idea about it, let's be honest. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I know a lot of people down south, there's this kind of, they turn their nose up at it and they say, oh, it's Sunday League, this, that and the other. But if it's that easy to do so, then, you know, a lot more players will be coming up and doing well. We've seen some players that have played in the Premier League down the road and come up here and failed. Yeah. We've also seen, you know, players who haven't done too well here go down the road and do extremely well. So, you know, it's one of those things. But, yeah, I didn't really have a view on it. And it really grinds my gears when people do have a view on it, but they don't watch it. They've never played it. You know, so who are you to really judge?
Fair. On those players kind of coming from south to north, touch on Joey Barton. He's probably one of the most recent ones and the most vocal and everything else that comes with that. Don't want to touch on him too much because his past history, everything else. But he came up, give it the big un, down the road by Christmas.
Yeah, that's the thing. Exactly that. You know, I think you have to come up with the attitude of saying I'm going to go and give it everything 100% and just let your football do the talking. Basically,
By the way, he was absolutely flying the season before. Was it at Burnley?
At Burnley, yeah. I think he might have been player of the season or something like that.
Yeah,
he had a really, really good season. It looked a massive signing. But he just couldn't deal with it. Yeah. You know, and there's probably a mental side of it as well when you play for, you know, Celtic or Rangers, in terms of you are coming to places like Livingston, and mentally, are you prepared to do that? Are you ready for that? It's all right playing at home or playing in you know, when Celtic play Rangers. That's absolutely fine. But the other games are the difficult ones, and mentally you have to be prepared for that. And some players aren't. And also you have a target on your back as well if you come and speak a lot and then don't do a lot. Yeah. So yeah, you know, it's one of those things. As I said, it really, really frustrates me because I think a lot of players come up the road with that mentality you're speaking about. It's Sunday League, I'm going to stroll this. Before they know it, they're struggling and they are going back down the road with a tail between their legs. So yeah, I think if you come up here as the way I did, and I'm going to give it 100%, I'm going to try my best, whether I'm playing in England or playing in Scotland, then, you know, everything else takes care of itself.
Probably ties into the next part quite well, to be fair. You're driving to Hibs training centre day one, arse end of nowhere, for lack of a better term. What is your thought in that kind of moment?
Well, it was one of those, you know, I at first, Graham Matthew says I tell a different story, but this is the story. You know, I've spoken to Graham, obviously Alan Stubbs was the manager, wasn't too keen on coming up the road. That was after Leyton Orient, and I was like, I could actually just stop here. You know, 29, I was like, that last year has been that crazy that I'm just like, do I do this?
Just drained.
Yeah, do I carry on doing this? Like, sail off into the sunset and go and live on an island somewhere. I was like, do I do this? So I had a few conversations with him. Anyway, I ended up coming up and, you know, I got picked up at the airport. Me and my brother came up. And again, I had no view on Hibs. I didn't know anything about them. Didn't know about the training ground or the stadium. So, you know, I go to the training ground, and like you said, it is in the middle of nowhere. But everything felt like the middle of nowhere because I was north of Birmingham. So, do you know what I mean? So, you know, get to training ground, and the facilities are unbelievable. You know, better than the facilities that when I first went to Burnley that they had there. Burnley, we didn't have showers for the first however long at the training ground. We used to drive from the stadium, 15-minute drive, and this team had just been in the Premier League. Yeah. You know, so, yeah, facilities at HTC, unbelievable. So I'm like, wow, this is impressive. And then we go to the stadium again, lovely stadium, and I'm like, this is a bit of me. I could definitely do this. Yeah. The sun was shining that day. That was the last time it was sunny here, by the way. That was the last time it was sunny in Scotland, the day I signed for Hibs, or agreed to sign for Hibs. So, yeah, all that stuff took care of itself. You know, I kind of had that urge and that passion to do it again. I had options to stay down south. But as I said, you know, because I had that kind of thing in the back of my mind, do I stop now? Is that kind of enough? Because I just didn't want to be in football for the, you know, another season like I just had there. Yeah. But, you know, Hibs definitely kind of relit the fire in me. And, yeah, it was one of those, once I saw the facilities, I was like, nah, I'll sign definitely.
I think that infrastructure itself, Blair, is pretty special. At Easter Road, it is one of the better stadiums in the country as well, isn't it?
Definitely. I mean, I would say probably quite interesting in that sense. You're obviously speaking about infrastructure there, relatively speaking, to a team like Burnley that had been in the Premier League and thriving to a degree. You obviously came to Hibs when they were in quite a difficult moment. How did that kind of colour your view in terms of coming up the road, or was the aim just to try and get something that would kind of rekindle that passion for football almost?
Yeah, I needed a project. It wasn't about just going and earning wages, because, I'm not saying that I'm rich, but I'd been lucky enough that at Burnley I'd been on a good wage, and at Leyton Orient, one thing they did throw out, it was money. So, you're on a good wage. I needed more than, the financial side of it. And all that always comes into it. You always want the most you can possibly get. But, you hit the nail on the head in terms of that. There was something that the club wanted to achieve, and I got it wrong in terms of what they did want to achieve, because, I remember, I started to go and look at houses and everything else, and I was getting picked up because my car was still down the road. And I said to the taxi man, he was a Hibs fan, I was like, it's just about getting promoted this season. And he kind of slowed down and looked in his mirror and he said, no, it's not. I was like, what's it about then? And he's like, the Scottish Cup. And I was like, oh. So that was the first time I knew that the Scottish Cup was more important than anything else. Yeah. But yeah, listen, it was a club that, wanted to get back into the Premier League, and if you could win the Scottish Cup along the way, which was a pipe dream, then obviously go and do it. But yeah, promotion was the main thing, and everything was geared to do that. Alan Stubbs had played down the road. He's someone that I had known from watching, him play. Yeah. So yeah, it was a perfect thing for me, because I think if Hibs maybe been in the Premier League and it was just another team that was going to kind of be run of the mill, and they weren't really going to fight for anything, then I don't know if I'd have came up. So them being in the Championship was ideal for me.
So you go from that sort of infrastructure, fan base, everything else, kind of big training centres, big stadiums, 15,000 season ticket holders. Why Livingston?
If I'm honest, I really enjoyed my time in Scotland at Hibs. I always thought I was going to come up, stay for a few years, go back down the road. Even when I signed my second contract, it was to, play those next 2 years, head back down the road. But I just fell in love with the country. I really, really did. Not so much with my first game, actually, at Hibs, which was Dumbarton, and I thought to myself, wow, I'd been at Easter Road, I'd been at HTC, and then this team were in our league. I remember waking up, actually, just to go to the story, I remember waking up, pulled up to the stadium, opened my eyes, and I thought, right, it must be picking somebody up. Because anyone's stand there, isn't there? So I was like, this is not a football, this is not where we're playing, obviously. And then we got off, and in we went, and there's a big rock in the corner, and I'm like,
freezing.
Always freezing. Yeah, exactly. I'm going home to get my stuff after this game. Maybe I don't come back. But yeah, in terms of, like you said there, why Livingston? I wanted to stay playing. My time at Hibs in terms of playing was limited. I could have stayed at the club and signed another 1-year contract.
3-year deal.
Yeah, 3-year deal. It was one of those things as well that I spoke about it when I left Leyton Orient. I needed something again to light a fire within me. And, it was another team that were going to be fighting against all odds. And, there was a project there. And it wasn't good to go and win the league. It's to stay in the league. Can you fight and can you do that? And I spoke about siege mentality, liking to play away from home. It was like, right, yeah, this can be kind of the final thing for me. And it just, meant I could stay in and around Edinburgh as well. I'd started to enrol into my a football course at Edinburgh Napier University. I started doing my coaching badges, so everything felt right for me. I spoke to Davey on numerous occasions. We got the deal sorted, and that was kind of it, really. I obviously told Hibs when I told them that I was leaving the football club, which was difficult. But in terms of coming to Livingston, it was the ideal thing for me at that age. I was going to play on. You need to be starting games at that age as well. I didn't want to be a bit part player. I knew I had a couple of years left in me that I could definitely play at the level still, and obviously Livingston allowed me to do that.
On that siege mentality, obviously Livingston's support is much more minimalistic than what you've been at before. Does it almost feel like you're playing away from home a lot of the time, even though you're in our ground, but three stands are sometimes filled by Hibs, Hearts, Aberdeen, Rangers, Celtic, whatever that may be?
Yeah.
Does it sometimes feel you're actually against it almost?
Yeah, it does, in terms of, obviously the fans being outnumbered, but the fact that you train on the pitch every single day helps. So I know we spoke about having training grounds, etc. And if you'd have had that and then came to Livingston and been like, right, there's 3 stands sold to the other team, this is definitely an advantage them. Yeah. Whereas, we just didn't care. We just didn't care. We had that kind of mentality about us. We didn't care, and there was a couple of things in the dressing room that the manager wouldn't have seen that, as a player and as an older player, I didn't accept. And standards had to be changed within there, and they were. But we all fought for each other. The boys all fought for each other, regardless of who was playing, who was captain, who was upset that they were sub or whatever else. We just didn't accept it, and it's probably, if if I could liken it to a manager you spoke about earlier, it's probably like Martin Allen. We were the mad dogs of the league because that was just us. That's just the way we were. And we didn't care, and we weren't apologetic about it. That was us, and we were willing to fight and scrap for everything.
From a kind of outside perspective, Blair, so I'm relatively new to the club, last kind of 18 months or whatever, but that kind of showed in performances, and that was outside perspective. Mm-hmm. Watching Livingston was, they don't care. They're big, they're strong, they're bullies. Mm-hmm. They just fight and win football matches, essentially. Yeah,
absolutely. I think your first season in particular, Marv, I think that first season Livingston and in the Premier League, they're obviously riding this kind of wave of momentum coming up. But I think probably the view of fans was that maybe we needed to be a bit of a change and a refresh. And I think you coming in was just totally symbolic of where we were as a club. I think you spoke there about standard. For me, again, from an off-field perspective at that time, the standard just seemed to rise.
Yeah.
Quite dramatically in that sense. Like, first season we obviously had a lot of good results, probably backs against the wall, that kind of stuff. We obviously touched upon that win over Celtic. For me, we were fantastic value for a win like that. Yeah. I don't think that win's happening in that first season unless a player like yourself raising that standards coming in and basically elevating the squad there, I think.
Yeah, we had, like I said, it was a good group, and Linda Dykes came in at that point as well. Nicky Devlin as well, and a lot of us had points to prove. These boys had points to prove because they want to kick on, and they have, and go on. And for me, it's probably one of those things in a selfish way is that I need to show Hibs that I can still play week in, week out within this league. Because there's always people that are going to doubt you, and yes, you should always be focused on yourself and motivate yourself, but you also need outside influences to motivate you as well. And as I said, it was a perfect fit for me. People like Scott Pittman, Mr. Livingston was brilliant because he's one of those that just wanted to follow you, in terms of how you were and how you saw the game and respected that you came from a higher level. And it wasn't one of those things I came to the dressing room and be like, I'll play at a higher level than you guys, so you must do what I'm doing. Yeah. But if I believe what you're doing is incorrect, then it's not going to be accepted. It doesn't always have to rely on the manager or David to come in and say, what the hell's going on here? We sorted it out ourselves. And Big Stretcher, I know, was goalie coach for a while. He was probably the enforcer of the rules because he was a lot bigger than me. So if I wasn't happy with something, I'd say, big man, could you go and sort this out? And he wouldn't say boo to a goose, but being the size that he is, I think a lot of people just looked at him and said, right, yeah, let's just say, do what he says.
Kind of, what was I going to touch on? Sorry, I've completely lost my chain of thought. Loyalty, that's what I was going to say, sorry. Who's more loyal to you, your dog or Scott Pittman to Livingston?
Oh, that is a tight one, by the way.
So we asked Davey about Scott Pittman. They gave a little speech and things. He didn't have an agent for numerous years. Like, didn't really read his contract, just kind of signed it off and things.
Yeah, probably cost himself some money though, didn't he?
Sending it to some international kind of IFA to go and play international.
Trying to pay for a miracle or something like that, man. Listen, Scott Pittman's loyalty is something that Livingston won't see again. Not many football clubs in this day and age will see again, if I'm honest. A brilliant guy. As like Davey says, he goes in and signs contracts and doesn't look at it, but he's such a workhorse. He definitely made my kind of last 2 seasons easier because I had to do a lot less running. Because he wouldn't speak on the pitch. He was like a mute. He would run past you and press rather than saying, Marv, you run 5 yards to do that. He'd run like 25 yards by you. And it's like one of those things, like a puppy almost. Sometimes you have to get him on a leash and everything else. But honestly, he's such a lovely guy. One of them that you definitely go into battle with, not because of the size of the dog, as they always say, but kind of the bite that he has and the heart that he has for the football club. He loves it. And he's one of those that are just respected straight away. You go into the dressing room, you respect him. And he's so humble. Honestly, if you went in there and you had no idea about Livingston, you'd think he's maybe a trialist or someone that doesn't ever play any games. Not that, he's played that many games, because he has no ego about him at all. Yeah. But when it comes to playing games of football and giving his all, he really shows what Livingston is. But no, I have to say my dog's more loyal than Scott, because he's got a waggy tail and Scott doesn't.
I mean, you do have to walk your dog in weather like today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, nearly step over and he doesn't care. He just off he goes, unless I've got a treat.
On Scott Pittman, Blair, I think we touched on it previously that it's Livingston starting 11 as Scott Pittman and whoever. That's kind of been vital for years now, hasn't it?
Aye, and I think the fact, to go back probably an earlier point, the fact that he has came through so many iterations of this side, like he was obviously a mainstay when we won the playoffs to get promoted. He's obviously been a mainstay throughout that entire stay in the Premiership, and he's still here today, obviously. And I think that just sums him up as a player. And my question was actually going to be, what's it like playing alongside somebody like that, Marv? Is he, in terms of players that have done that run, and you've obviously been in the heart of that midfield, how does he compare with guys that you've played down the road with?
In terms of his kind of the qualities that he does have, you know, he's quite unique in terms of, you know, how hard he works his third man running, you know, how unselfish he is as well. Listen, Scott could have gone down the road and played. I have no doubt about that. I really, really don't. You know, he's a really, really good footballer. I know at times when he signed new contracts at Livingston, people have been interested in him from perceived bigger clubs, and he's not wanting to do it. I think he's very much a homeboy, which helps Livingston definitely as well. But in terms of just actual ability, and considering he came through, he was at Broxburn, wasn't he? Like, he came through kind of that non-league route as well. Been absolutely brilliant. And you don't play all these years at Livingston because, you know, in the Premier League and obviously now in the Championship and whatever else, and go through the leagues with them and get kept there if you're a bad player. You know, there's no sentiment in kind of in football. You know, people can say what they want. If he wasn't good at football, he wouldn't be there. So yeah, for me, he could have definitely gone down the road and played, but he's happy to play at Livingston. And, you know, Livingston have obviously been delighted to have him there. So, yeah, a real, real good footballer. And as I said, even an even better guy. There's no ego there. You know, a fantastic kind of character and ambassador, rather, for Livingston Football Club.
I've interviewed him once.
Oh, lucky you get your words out of him.
It was probably the most difficult thing I've ever done. So I didn't interview the first month or so that I was here, just kind of new to the kind of industry and everything else. And my first one was always going to be Davey, and I was like, just tear me to pieces. Yeah. Now we've got Scott Pittman in hospitality, which is a million times harder than suffering a loss with Davey. At least you know what you're getting that side. But he's just a gentleman. He's got time for everybody. Like, regardless of who's in the club, he'll make sure he says hello, shake your hand, everything else.
Just doesn't want to talk. That's all. He just doesn't want to say a word.
So it's almost that reverse psychology. If I just come up and say hello and shake your hand, that's enough.
No, that interview must have been quite something.
It was difficult. Hospitality ended early that night, to be fair, so. We'll move on. Marv, National Cup final. Second person, obviously, to lead the team out in a National Cup final behind Stuart Lovell. It's obviously a very different experience because of the time that it was in terms of COVID and everything else. How did that feel?
Strange. You know, really, really strange. And it's one of those things that you're just hoping that the rules change, because COVID was changing every day, basically, you know. So once we had got to the final, it was one of those things that you're thinking, right, hopefully some fans can go in, you know, hopefully there's like a small section or whatever else. And it just didn't happen the closer you got. And even up until, you know, a couple of days before, you're still kind of hoping, you know, could something change? And it didn't. You know, but it was one of those things that it was a massive honour to do. Probably they shouldn't have done it, but there was some fans along the way in terms of when the coach left and stuff. And, you know, we spoke about how important it was to try and bring a smile to people's faces. And again, I speak about the siege mentality. And the last thing I said to the boys before we were in the tunnel, you know, before, you know, going out onto the pitch and the game starting, is that we weren't doing this for us. We were doing it for everyone else, because, you know, those people who couldn't be there, as a Livingston fan, you know, when you're going to get to the cup final kind of thing, it's one of those things. But I said they'll be sitting watching at home, and the people that have came out and, you know, greeted us along the way with the banners and stuff, and I'm not talking about, you know, hundreds of thousands of people, but it meant an awful lot. And that was what we had in our minds. Can we go out and put smiles on those people's faces? Because it was a horrible time, COVID. We knew that. But yeah, listen, it was an absolute honour to do so. I knew, you know, I was emotional after the game, because I knew that was it for me. I knew that was my last season, you know, in terms of where I was in my mind and can I get through this season, you know, and not sustain a massive injury. That was my thing, because so many people I had played with had ACLs and all these other things. And yes, I had another year left on my contract, but I wanted to always be remembered as a player who kind of finished playing as close to their peak as possible, rather than someone who stayed on too long and you think, get him out of the team now, this is enough. So yeah, it was an emotional day, definitely.
I think the no fans obviously doesn't help anybody, even from a fan perspective watching on the TV. How difficult is it? Because there's no atmosphere, there's no fireworks, anything else. It just looks like two teams, and it could be anywhere in the world. It wouldn't have to be at Hampden, it could be down the road.
I think it's that lack of action. I think the big thing I kind of took away from that early part of the season, watching on a laptop or a TV or whatever, that lack of reaction to anything that's happening on the pitch. I think that must have been so surreal to be a part of on the pitch as well. Like, you obviously scored during lockdown, which I'm sure would have been disastrous, I suppose. So I'm not touching that too much. But like, how does that feel as a player? You've obviously played an entire season in that sense. To not be able to really kind of share those moments with the fans and that reaction, I think.
Yeah.
That fundamentally is human nature, I think was quite difficult.
How much does that drive you as well, Marv? Obviously, Hampden's a big empty place. Like, it's a big hollow stadium almost. It's not as if it's quite tight and on you and things. You can maybe get away with it a wee bit more, but
it was hard.
It must be difficult in that situation.
Yeah, Hampden was a lot harder. You know, playing throughout the season, it felt like training games, definitely at the start. And you know, people can say what they want. I think there was a few kind of results that you looked at and it was like, but I just think mentally it was difficult to get used to it being completely empty, and it probably worked to our advantage. Whereas, you know, some home games, if I've been disrespectful, it wouldn't be sold out at Livingston. Yeah. So, you know, and we had trained on the pitch with no fans there. Yeah. So it was kind of like one of those things where it's probably a little bit easier for us to be able to do, but no one wanted to play football during that. Yeah. You know, it just wasn't what anyone wanted, because about the fans, I know people say this and it sounds a bit cheesy, but football was nothing. Yeah. You know, if you'd have said to me, you can have a career in football, but there's never going to be any fans at any games, I'd probably stayed in for a few years and got back out, because I was just like, this is not great at all.
Well, I watch a lot of interviews, like one of them was Paul Caddis, who kind of went down south, and he was the same. Football's done now for me. Like, don't care for it anymore. This isn't why I grew up wanting to be a footballer.
100%.
And in that sentence, obviously, I understand exactly what's going on in the world and everything that comes with it. But
but just taking football as isolation. It really, really did. And then it's like one of those things, like saying, talking about the cup final, and you go in there and there's no fans there, and you're seeing the amount of people that would have loved to have been here. Yes, you know, fans, and you a chance are better than me, that were disappointed to miss league games, but a cup final, like, you know, it's like, come on, like, it's such a massive thing, you know, talking about growing the club and the local community, and, you know, everyone would have, you know, wanted kind of Livingston to win, because it was like one of those things. Yes, listen, St Johnstone aren't any sort of like massive club, but we were a smaller club in that, and, you know, we'd gone through the rounds and people were like, oh, they could actually do this. So, you know, every neutral would have supported us as well. So, yeah, it was one of those things that was horrendous to play in terms of not just the result, but having no fans there was tough, really tough.
You did touch on your emotions in terms of that you were visibly crying and everything.
Yeah.
There was no better opportunity for Livingston either. In that respect, St Johnstone Belows in the league, like, everybody wanted Livingston to win. It just felt like it was, again, outside perspective, at that stage, it was just almost a foregone conclusion that obviously we're going to lift the trophy. Yeah,
that's the thing, you know. Not only have you got to a cup final, you've got to a cup final where you fancy yourself to be able to beat the opposition.
Because you normally do run into one of the old firm or
of course,
whatever that
exactly,
may be.
You know, and you get to the final and, like you say you've got Celtic or Rangers, you think, oh, here we go. But you're playing St Johnstone, as you said, at that point in time, you know, higher than them in the league, and I think we could actually do this. We really, really could. And yeah, I just think all of those things all mixed together. The missus being a St Johnstone fan was probably the final nail in the coffin for me, her and her family. But yeah, it was, I just knew that, you know, I'd kind of gone into that season, and as the season went on, I knew that was it. You know, I'd not spoken to anyone. You know, I'm not one of those that, you know, go to people for advice and say, what do you think I should do? I knew that was me done. I was stopping, and it was almost like one of those things that, if I'm honest, if we'd have won the cup final, I probably could have stopped after that game.
We touched on that kind of retiring value, stop scooding things.
Yeah, just stop and say, in a selfish way, it's not going to get any better for me. You know, I've came through non-league and I've done all this, and I've been lucky to play one professional game, let alone all of these, and then maybe to end on a cup final victory for a team that should never win a cup. You know, our odds would have been God knows at the start. Do you know what I mean? So maybe I could have stopped then. You know, they probably would have been happy with that, actually. So.
Is there a sense of regret in that your professional career ended in front of no fans? Does that sting a bit in the sense that it just kind of went out with a whimper, in the sense that nobody's
clapping crisp packets?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, flipping out, getting clapped by Scott Pittman. No, not really. Not really. I'm always one of them that kind of looks at the positives of everything, and I've lived people's dreams, and people have been stuck in their house, and I've been able to go out and train, and I've been able to go out and play. So there's always comes some sort of positive, do you know what I mean, in terms of it. Would I prefer, fans to have been there and gone out with fans in and around it? 100%. But yeah, no, I have very, very little regrets. So I was just delighted to, have played professional football and, obviously, finishing that season. The main thing for Livingston was always to stay in the Premier League, and we'd achieved that. Yes, want to finish top 6 and all those other things, and we didn't manage to do that. But yeah, it was always one of those things that I was like, nah, do you know what? I've kind of came into this football club. The first thing that David said to me, we just need to stay in the Premier League. To help the club grow, we need to do this. Budget will get better each season. You've managed to help do that for a couple of years, so it's kind of like job done.
Let's touch on the 2 goals. The first one, Tynecastle. Did it feel like I kind of get it up you?
Kinda a massive one. Absolute massive one. And the only thing, talk about regrets, the only thing I do regret from that game is that I'd been booked before because my shirt would have came off. I'd been swinging around my head. And it was similar to the goal I scored a home goal. It was against, I can't remember who I scored a home goal against, but it was kind of similar where it had been like a ball that was thrown in and somebody had flicked it on. But yeah, to hear Tynecastle just go absolutely silent. And I go to the gym and stuff now, and some of the people that I've met there are Heart season ticket holders, and they said if anyone that we didn't want to score, it was you. So yeah, it was a massive one, and honestly, all the lads knew how delighted I was to score as well. Yeah. So, even some of the boys from the back actually ran forward to celebrate, which rarely happened because they were so lazy. But yeah, it felt like that massively. And then, as I started to arc back round, I could see the Livingston fans at the top as well. So I was, absolutely buzzing. Mate.
Absolute buzz.
Brilliant.
The second one, you've roughly described it there. Mm-hmm. I have 2 different descriptions of your goal. It was against Dundee United.
Dundee
United from about 3 yards.
Yeah.
We watched it back this morning. So you're going bicycle kick, right? So description 1, a falling overhead kick.
Oh, I'll take that one. Wait, have I got to guess who these are from?
No.
No. I'll take that one.
These are from the same person. So one is a falling overhead kick, which got voice noted to me last week.
Yeah.
The one on the official match report website says it was an acrobatic finish.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'll take that one. Definitely take that one. It was kind of like a side... I actually hurt my back doing that, I remember. It was kind of like I think it's like kind of like a side and swing. As soon as I felt the contact, you just know it's going to end up. You're so close to the goal. The goalkeeper can't save it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Acrobatic, wow.
I think overhead kick is very generous.
Very generous.
Very generous.
We did watch it back this morning.
We like generosity here. Yeah. It's 2025, we can start the year right, so we're going to go with that.
We need to be nice, absolutely. It was the same person, falling overhead kick with an acrobatic finish, and it was Mr. Dave Black.
Yeah, falling over, Dave. I'm going to call him after this. Falling over.
A falling overhead kick is how it was described.
What a guy.
Transition from player to coach, Marv. Was that always in your head?
Always. Again, I'd probably been worried by, going back to Eddie, that he had to retire early, and he'd always say to us as young players, I didn't think my career was going to stop when it did. What happens if you get injured tomorrow? And it's like one of those things you're like, nah, it's not going to happen to me. He said that for the first couple of years, and then you're like, oh, maybe it can happen. Yeah, exactly. So you're trying to look at what's next, and being around sessions, and you write them down, the ones that you like. So yeah, it was always in my mind that that's what I wanted to do. And you spoke about coming to Livingston and why Livingston. As I said, I started to do my coaching badges. They offered me to go and work with Pitt Senior with the reserves as well, so I could do a lot more stuff in terms of training, coaching rather, training sessions and everything else. So I did that. So yeah, it was always in my mind, always in my mind. And as I said, I knew that was my last season that I'll be playing. I'd been offered to go elsewhere and coach as well, but I didn't want to do it. One of the conversations that Davey called me mad. But yeah, listen, it was always something that I wanted to do, and I was very, very lucky and privileged that Davey then had an opportunity. I think Liam Fox was the assistant at the time. He was then leaving, and he went to Dundee United, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, and there was an opening, and Davey offered it to me. So forever grateful for that, because something that I've always wanted to do, and something that I still love kind of doing now. So yeah, no, it was always something that I wanted to transition into.
We're obviously new to it at that sort of stage. Was it important for you to be comfortable in the environment, almost, that you already know the lads, the setup, the infrastructure, everything that comes with it, how it runs day to day?
Yeah.
Does that just let you kind of find your feet a wee bit before you then
100%
go and move on?
100%. Like you said, it's one of those things as well. You're respected by the players, and it's probably very, very different. If I'd have been like 23, 24 and had to retire early and been given that position when you're in the dressing room as a joker one day and then you've got to be the serious guy the next, you know what I mean? It's probably a lot different, whereas I was the old man of the group, you know, in terms of Livingston at that point. So the transition was very, very easy. You're respected because you'd become captain as well. So yeah, it was easy for me. I knew how Davey works on a day-to-day, like you said there, and you know I'd been involved in all the training sessions. So yeah, it was a comfortable thing for me to do, and it definitely made sense.
From a fan side though, Blair, it can only be a good thing that there's somebody kind of progressing through the club, somebody that you already know and kind of trust already. That can only be a good thing from the outside.
I think that continuity is a massive thing, and I think that's one cornerstone that the club's kind of been built on success-wise the past 6, 7, 8 years. Obviously spoke before about the kind of standard you set as a player. I think it was quite evident you would bring that obviously in a kind of coaching capacity. I'm just quite curious, your relationship with Davey. You've obviously went for this senior player, the captain obviously of the side, to obviously working with him as his assistant. How did that relationship kind of change? Was that kind of mooted at the start that there would be that kind of progression into a coaching role when you first kind of joined as a player? Was that always a kind of pathway that was available?
No, not really. In terms of like the pathway, it was always that I'd be with a reserve. You never kind of know what's going to happen. You didn't know Liam Fox was going to come in. You didn't know Holte was going to leave and Davey was going to step up. So at that point, you were unsure what was going to happen. So I was unsure that, you know, would there be a transition for me once I stopped playing? I didn't really know that. But in terms of, you know, the change of relationship, when you are captain, you know, the manager speaks to you quite a lot anyway. About various different things, and obviously, you know, you go a bit more in depth when you are assistant manager. But yeah, nothing really changed. You know, me and Davey had a good relationship when I signed for the club. We have a good relationship now. You know, the only difference between like kind of now and then is that he shouts at me a lot less now than he did then. But no, even as assistant, like I think it's one of those things that, you know, I would always have an opinion on something, and if I didn't agree with Davey, I'd say, well, I don't agree, and this is why. And he was the manager, so, you know, he'd always make the final decision. But I think he always respected me that I wouldn't just say, oh, no. You know,
not being that yes man.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and as time went on and, you know, obviously as a manager you have to begin to trust your assistant, and he did that over time and, you know, allowed me to do a lot more things in terms of defensive players and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, and you know, being at a club like Livingston, there isn't a million people above Davey in terms of how the club runs. So, in terms of experience, I've probably experienced things a lot more than any other assistant would have because of one, we're in the Premier League. Two, you know, there's not a lot of support staff in and around it, so you're privy to a lot more things than you would be if you're at I don't know, Celtic or Rangers, where you're just concentrating on that training session for 90 minutes. You know, there's a lot more that kind of went with it at Livingston, which again I'm grateful for, because you can do all the coaching courses you want, all the badges and stuff you want to do, all the courses at university. It won't prepare you for that. That was a real life experience. Yeah, exactly.
That was actually going to be my next question, to be fair. Is it more difficult because there's less heads, but is it also easier in the same sentence because there's not as many voices, opinions, everything else to get to that decision?
Yeah, I think it's easier in terms of if you want to get to decisions, but it's worse for, you know...
long hours.
Yeah, exactly, because you don't have the support staff that at times you need, you know. Davey would get pulled off to do something absolutely random that, you know...
build the gym.
Yeah, like a manager shouldn't be doing, do you know what I mean? Or have to go to that meeting, and you're like... meant to be the manager to concentrate on this, but you can't do that. So, yeah, the hours are extremely long, and people think, right, you know, you're in the training ground or at the stadium or whatever, once you leave there, that's it done. That definitely wasn't it done, because you go home and then you're clipping stuff up, and, you know, for meetings the next day, and you're watching training back, and you're doing, you know, watching future opponents, and you're watching previous games that we've had. Like, people do not understand the amount of hours that go into that on the coaching side it's definitely a lot.
Do you have a kind of set routine almost, so away from the stadium, like how your kind of week looks? So maybe like Monday will clip training, Tuesday will maybe focus a little bit on the opponent. So when I deliver Wednesday,
routine is not a word that goes with football when you're in the coaching side of it. And the reason I say that to you is because, you know, okay, my routine might be on a Monday I would want to go home and I'd want to watch training from that day. And I'll match from the weekend and then try and like kind of mirror like what's happened. But you might come to me after training and say, Marv, can you look at how I trained today in training in terms of a defensive positioning, or, you know, when I didn't play the ball forward, or when someone went off the back of me. So my routine all of a sudden's blown out the window. Because you might come and ask that question, I'm like, right, I'll do that. And for me to get 3 or 4 minutes worth of clips for you takes me 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So then your routine's done, and you're like, oh, hang on a minute. So what I was meant to do today, now it's to move to tomorrow. So you have to be so flexible with it, and that's why you need such a supportive family. I'm lucky my missus works in football, so she kind of understands it. But at times it's like, you'll go home, again, walk the dog, and then you'll come back in, you're on your laptop, and you'll stop for dinner, and then you're back on your laptop, and before you know it's 11:30 at night. You're like, oh my God, we've got training again.
Go to bed, I need to.
Yeah, exactly.
And you got to deliver tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. So routine isn't something that I would ever pin next to anyone who works within football.
You're obviously doing a bit with the reserves. You touched on kind of big stretch and things like that. We had a Nigerian legend ourselves, Blair, in terms of
big Efe, man.
Big Efe indeed. So we asked a question to Davey a few weeks ago. There's a little red car sitting in the car park, and I think you told a story on another podcast about a little car and Efe driving it and everything else. But was he as nuts as what he's been made out to be?
Davey,
that smile is amazing.
Davey almost
so
killed me, but he put me in a car with Efe, a manual car. I remember we went to play someone. Again, it might have been Dundee United, and I'm not joking. How we got there and home in one piece, I have no idea. The journey started by Efe just grinding the gears and checking the wrong way for oncoming traffic. So I'm like, mate, you're looking the wrong way. Like, what are you actually doing here? And his answer was, oh, my friend, I forgot. I'm like, whoa. Like, it's too late.
Please don't forget.
Yeah, exactly. Seatbelts on. Oh, man, Efe could not drive. Honestly, he could not drive. He was the worst driver. And he admitted when we got back, oh, yeah, I'm used to driving automatic. I don't really drive manuals. And I was like, really? Got out of that car, up I went. Never again was I in a car with him. Brilliant character though. Yeah. Again, you speak about someone like Scott Pittman, who you would never know that the career they've had, and you wouldn't know Efe's played against Barcelona, African Cup of Nations won it, all these things. You would never ever know such a humble guy. He can't drive.
Blair, he almost, I don't want to be disrespectful, but almost fell up the way as well, didn't he? So he's kind of stepped down from Celtic through Hibs, everything else, came to Livingston, then got a 2-year deal at St Johnstone after kind of leaving Livingston as well, kind of fallen up, but his lackadaisical approach to numerous things, let's say, did that show on the pitch as well?
I think cult hero's probably a word for Efe, I would say, in Scottish football.
Just chopping wingers left and right.
To be fair, I definitely rated Efe when he was here. Definitely thought he added something to the group. Defensively, I think you could see quite evidently how he'd won the African Cup of Nations and he played Champions League. I think his off-field persona just adds to the whole legend about him, to be fair.
Yeah, enough.
Oh, man. Did David tell you about the Efe Hibs game, the first game that Efe played?
I think I know the story, but I'll let you tell.
Yeah, so obviously I knew Efe from Hibs, and Davey wanted the centre half, so I was like, yeah, like Efe, like he was over in Nigeria or wherever he was. So Davey got him over anyway. Efe hadn't played football for about a year or whatever it had been, 6 months. So Davey signs him, go to Hibs. I'm suspended for this game. And Davey says to him, the last thing he says to him before going out, Efe, just like hit the channels. Like, you've not played for a while. These boys will know you've trained with them. They'll expect you to chop, etc., etc. Game starts. Efe is chopping everyone. And I'm like, oh, no. So I'm sitting up in the stand and I'm just like, oh, no.
My recommendation.
Yeah. So Davey's turning around like, I can see he's looking for me because he's saying, Efe. And Effie's ignoring him. Effie doesn't care. Effie's just like honestly playing like he's got his headphones on. Cannot hear a word, like he's got music in his ears. And Davey's constantly turning around and I'm sitting and I'm ducking and diving and I'm like, oh, Effie, don't give a goal away. To be fair, he got away with it. In that game, he got away with it. But yeah, Davey just went red. Honestly, his blood pressure, his heart rate must have been so high, man.
Just a standard Saturday for Davey.
Exactly.
It probably ties in quite well to the next section, sorry. We have another 3 would you rathers. Mm-hmm. The first one is, would you rather get a roasting from Davey for a poor performance or be driven by Efe Ambrose?
A roasting? Yeah. I'll survive a roasting. I won't survive if he's driving.
Would you rather score the winner for Livingston in the final or represent Jamaica internationally?
Score the winner for Livy in the final because I'll get a bonus and it won't actually cost me.
You wouldn't actually have to pay out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And the final one, play staff 5-a-sides in the same team as Christoph Berra or go to a pub in Gorgie for the day?
What pub?
You don't need to answer that. I'm not gonna stitch you that much.
Oh, Dave Black, I love you.
We're going to make it a little bit more serious now, just for a few minutes, Marv, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Obviously done a little bit of research on yourself and things like that. So I'm going to read one of your own quotes from your Twitter.
Yeah.
Team colours mean nothing when we've got the biggest fight of our lives going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember it. Remember it well. You know, and it's quite ironic that obviously, you know, you find that tweet and stuff that's happened with Stefan ever so recently. You know, we were really going for a time where it's, you know, it was a difficult time. It was a difficult time seeing what was going on in and around the world, and you know how people were being treated because of the colour of their skin and all of these sorts of things. And sometimes you sit at home and, you know, as I said, I'm very, very privileged to have the life that I currently do have, and, you know, to play professional football and everything else. And, you know, I always think that when I meet people, I'm always well respected. You know, certain things are said online, but online is online. And then you look across the other side of the world that people look like you that might not be as lucky to have the life that you've had, and they're treated very, very differently. And that for me is probably one of the hardest things to see, because, you know, skin colour is not something that you can change. You know, it's just the way you're born. Yeah. You know, it's not a decision that people make. You know, it's not an option where you can say, you know, you pick one of these options. It's just the way that you're born. And yeah, it was tough to see some of the things that were going on, you know, and then it kind of spilled onto things being said online, and then it spilled onto things being said on the football pitch. And it was just like, you know, like, come on, like this isn't okay. And the thing that probably frustrates me the most is when people say, oh, it's just an insult. It isn't. I would rather somebody, you know, physically like hit me than racially abuse me. And, you know, I say that, and now I'm kind of emotionally detached from it, rather, where I'm like, you know, it's water for ducks back. And I've had to become that way because, talking from my own personal experience, the first couple of times it did happen, it sends you to a place where you do not ever want to be as a human being. You know, some of the thoughts that go through your mind. So, you know, now I'm just like, I'm kind of, you know, I'm immune to it, so it doesn't make any difference to me. I
think.
Go on.
Is that a bad thing?
It is, but it's almost like self-protection.
Yeah.
You know, because I have a brilliant support network around me. When it's happened to me, I've had, you know, brilliant people around me to help me through it. Not everyone. I think to myself, imagine I didn't have that support network. Imagine this happened to me, I didn't have that support network. Or, you know, I went into my place of work, that's happened to some people, and it happens I don't have that support network. Because one thing reading it, it's one thing seeing a video of someone racially abusing you, it's another thing someone saying it to your face.
Yeah.
And all that happening without a support network, you know, would make it a lot more difficult. So, you know, at times, you know, without naming anyone, that, you know, I've spoken to players, you know, after the Euros with the England players, I spoke to players who I've never spoken to in my life, who have played at a lot higher level than me, that have more money than I can ever wish for. Yeah. You know, and yet, because you've been through it, you know, they can reach out and you can speak to certain individuals about and can help people through it. But if I was still in that place where, you know, I let it cut me as deeply as it did when it first happened to me, you can't then offer that help, if that makes sense. Yeah. You know, so yeah, it might be seen as a bad thing. It might be seen, I think it's more of a sad state of affairs when you have to be that way. You know, but as I said, you know, for every one bad person out there, there is, you know, thousands of good people out there. And, you know, it's brilliant the support you do get from people who don't know you. Yeah. That's probably the biggest thing for me.
I think, again, from an outside perspective, I can't comment too much on it, you know, as can, but there seems to be a lot of kind of discriminatory throwaway comments, for example, which is maybe seen as casual.
Yeah.
Hurts just the same, though. Of
course it is. And, you know, there's this thing that people always say about education. It's not... Some people it might be an educational thing where they don't understand what they are saying, but, you know, I always say it this way, that a lot of people who write these things wouldn't say it in their place of work. You know, and they realise that they wouldn't say it in their place of work because it's wrong to say. Yep. You know, if it was an educational thing, you would say it online, or you say it to somebody's face, or you would say it at work in front of your peers. Yeah. People don't do that. So yeah, you know, throwaway comments to one person, type in, you know, something out and hitting send, and then 30 seconds later or a minute later, they probably forgot about it because they're downstairs making a cup of tea. Yeah. The person who receives that, you know, you don't exactly, you don't forget about it that quickly. And it's been, as I said, you know, some good has come from it. I think with my kind of attitude towards it now, because people have now come back and done full circle and apologised and not realised what they have written. So for me, that they should never have written it in the first place, but it shows that they're in a better place, and you know, things are improving with some people. But you know, unfortunately, as I said, I referred to Stefan when we started speaking about this. It won't change within our lifetime. You won't be treated. Everyone won't be treated the same all around the world within our lifetime. That is just, unfortunately, a sad state of affairs. And it just reminds you, you know, as I said, when you see Stefan, you see that video, and I've spoken to him, and you see that sort of thing, it just reminds you kind of where some people are at, you know, with this kind of subject. And it doesn't surprise me that it happens in a country where racism is just accepted. You know, people, like I said, these throwaway comments are just accepted. It's just part of life. Yeah. So yeah, it's a difficult one, but it's something that, you know, I'm very privileged to live in a country where I don't see it. People always said to me when I was coming up here, he said, what was people's, you know, perception of football when I came up here? What was people's perception of a black player or a black person moving to Scotland? Was very, very wrong. You know, I've been here for 9 years, and yes, it might again be different for you because I'm a footballer, and you know, people do know who I am, opposed to if I came and worked in Asda. But I can tell you from my point of view how it's been, and people have been nothing short of, you know, brilliant and marvellous to me here. And I've had the odd person write stupidness to me, but it happens more in England than it does happen up here. And, you know, people might think, oh, he's just saying that. I'm not, because I have no reason to now live in Scotland. Me and my partner can move to England quite easily, and the dog can move to England quite easily, because, you know, we are not tied to any specific country, because you can travel to work. You travel to England for work, you can travel to Scotland to work from England as well. So there's a reason that I do stay here.
One of your points did kind of kill one of my next questions.
Sorry.
No, not at all. Not at all. The only other bit on this kind of matter that I want to speak on, I think it was Sol Campbell that was quite vocal about it. Do you feel you're treated differently within sport and the industry in general?
No.
In terms of opportunity?
No, and listen, I'm hard-headed, as my mum would always say to you, is that I can go to 100 interviews for a job, for example, and not get any of them, and I will never ever walk out of that interview and say, oh, you know, they didn't hire me because of the colour of my skin. Because I think once I have that defeatist attitude, I'm done. What's the point in continuing? Yeah. I'd always come out and say I could have done that better, or maybe I didn't like that bit, or maybe I should have done this, or do you know what I mean? I'll always find another reason for it. It's easy for me to come out of an interview and say, you know, I didn't get a job because I'm black. Oh, that for me isn't an argument. And listen, it does happen. Don't get me wrong, it 100% does happen, but it's not something that I would ever accept within my mind. And I've had arguments with older, you know, not arguments, but discussions with older ex-professionals, black professionals, who say, oh, you know, I'm never going to get jobs, I'm not doing my coaching badges. And I'm like, well, your argument's weakened. You know, it's like saying I'm never going to be a brain surgeon, so I'm not going to go to university to study it. Well, then it's not going to work, is it? If you're not qualified for a job, you're not going to get it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it's not nothing to do with colour of your skin. Go and get qualified. Go and do your qualifications. And guess what? You don't get a certain amount of jobs after going for a certain amount of interviews, or you don't even get interviews after a certain amount of time. Your argument is a lot stronger than saying, I don't have any badges and I didn't do it and I didn't get any jobs because of the colour of my skin. No, mate, you're just not qualified. Yeah. You know, that it's as simple as that. And again, people will argue with me about this all day long. Well, that's just the way I look at it, because otherwise you're just walking around like a defeatist attitude. Like, to me, that's boring. I can't be bothered with that.
Thank you. I think it's obviously quite a difficult subject to talk about and things like that. But fine. Thank you for covering it. I do really appreciate it. Moving on, the media stuff, the moneymakers everywhere at the moment. In terms of the warm-up podcasts, everywhere else podcast. If it's not on TV, then
you have to edit that out. You can't talk about other podcasts on your podcast.
That's all right. That's all everyone. We're not fighting with the warm-up or open goal or anybody
You're
else.
You're going to be bigger than them soon.
Exactly. We'll take the podcast off them if we really
exactly.
want to. So, how is the kind of media stuff?
No, I enjoy it. Listen, I love it. You get to speak about football. You know, it's one of those things that I enjoy. I enjoy speaking about football. I enjoy doing those sorts of things. And you know, you guys obviously, you know, involved in the same sort of industry. It doesn't feel like work, does it? You just, you know, you go and you're speaking about the game. Yeah, exactly. And you know, it gets recorded. So yeah, I really, really enjoy it. You know, some of the comments you get online that you speak about certain clubs and you support that club. I must have supported about 8 different clubs this season, because as soon as you say a positive thing about one club, you support them. As soon as you don't say a positive thing about another club, you've got a narrative, you're biased, you're this. I'm none of those things. I'm quite open with who I support.
Who do you support?
You know, I support Hibs. I am very, very open with it. I don't care. Look for Hibs results, look for Livingston results. Why I play for both of the clubs. Who do I support? I support Hibs. That's it.
Who did you support as a boy? Like,
Arsenal.
see when you're Arsenal to go up and get that shot for Christmas.
Yeah. Well, I had to support Arsenal because my mum fancied Ian Wright. You know, at the time, honestly, I wanted to go to a party and I wanted the football kit.
You like that gold tooth?
Yeah, I supported Man United, and she was like, "Well, you can't have Man United kit because I fancy Ian Wright." And I'm like, "This is not how football works." So she's like, "If you want a kit for the party, you have to support Arsenal." So then I supported Arsenal ever since.
Did you have to get his name on the back and everything?
Yeah,
as well?
right. Ate everything, mate. I was absolutely buzzing, running around, mate. Couldn't score a goal, but I had the best kits and the latest kits. So, yeah, the media stuff is really, really good. As I said, you know, I don't have a narrative. I don't support anyone. I don't have a bias. I'm honest about the way I see things, whether it involves Hibs or not. As people have said recently, I just don't care. And I think, you know, whether you like it or you don't, that's just the way I am. I speak about what I see, and that's just my opinion on the game.
I think from an outside perspective of a game player, you do have people on these shows, your Chris Boyds, your Chris Suttons, they do have kind of loyalties to certain clubs, but...
Yeah, I think their colours are nailed to the mast. That would be fair to say.
Neil McCann, Neil Lennon's based on the Old Firm a few days ago as well, but I think people just want honesty.
That's what some people do.
Yeah.
Some people want honesty as long as it doesn't involve you saying something about their club.
Yeah.
And you can't say anything positive about the club they played against because it just means you got a narrative. But that is probably the most misused word in Scotland online. It really has to be. I'm like, do you even know what that word means? Like, not everything could be a narrative. It's not just an honest opinion, right or wrong. Like, leave me alone. Oh, no, I enjoy it. Sometimes I just sit on social media for like an hour or so in between Mrs. moaning at me and walking the dog. So I just, have a little scroll through and reply to some people and wind them up and then off I go.
Yeah.
What does the future look like for you, Marv? Is getting back into coaching a goal, or are you quite taken on with the media side of things? Is that something you'd want to continue?
No, I'll definitely get back into coaching. When I left Queen's in the summer, I was always going to have this year out because, you know, I spoke about how long my career had been playing and coaching and everything else. So I'd missed so much in terms of my family. You know, I know it's a stupid thing to say, but everyone's getting older, so to speak, you know. So, you know, my aunties and my uncles and my mum, you know, and then, you know, Christmas is the first Christmas where I went down for Christmas, you know, spent it with, you know, 18 members of my family, and then I didn't have to worry about what was happening Boxing Day. I didn't have to train, didn't have to play, didn't have to clip anything up.
Yeah.
And I just wanted that. When it got to summer, I was like, I just need this year to go and spend time with them and go away on holiday when I want to go away, and you know, my missus have been able to kind of do that. But yeah, listen, I'll definitely be back on the grass. I'll have my pro license, you know, by the summer, and whether it's, you know, being a coach, assistant, or manager, I don't really care. You know, I've almost been tempted back in, you know, to go back down the road a couple of times into coaching roles. But, you know, I have to stay true to myself as well. Because as I said, you know, if I'm into something, I'm fully invested. It's not like I can be like, right, I'll just do it. But when I get home, I won't do any work. And because it affects your family life as well. You know, my missus would admit that to you openly. Like, I'm a totally different person because my whole mood, as you are as fans, your whole mood depends on what happens in that 90 minutes. Yeah. You know, and it's worse when you're, you know, in a coaching team because you can't physically do anything. Like fans, you can't physically do anything. So it's a lot harder to kind of accept. So, you know, I'll 100% go in again next season. I said, whatever the role is, I don't care. I don't have an ego. I just want to be involved in football.
So you're just playing against boys at Queen of South on the PlayStation at the moment?
Yeah.
Tire, you're off?
No, I've got PlayStation 5. They've got PlayStation 4. I can't afford the 5. So they've only got.
It's not been released in them, yet, has it?
They've only got the 4. The wages aren't enough.
Yes, one.
Yeah, they've got to have the PlayStation 5, mate. They've not got the wages for that yet. So we've got GoFundMe going on.
Final bit then, Marv. If you could pick your dream five-a-side team of players you've played with, who would it be?
Oh, wow. It's going to upset some players.
Do you want to do it Livingston related?
Don't Livy related?
All I would say is if Efe isn't in this.
If it's Livy related, nah, he's
still not in it.
He's still not in it. I'll give you a mixture of down the road and up here. So I'll go probably Asmir Begovic in goal.
Good choice.
Yeah, good goalkeeper. Came as a young goalkeeper, wasn't the best, but the career he's gone on to have. I'll go with him, which is going to upset Lee Grant now, who I played with at Burnley, and Brian Jensen, but that's fine. Defensively,
Manchester United Lee Grant.
Yeah. Lee Grant, played with him at Burnley. Brilliant goalkeeper, and he's one of the again, a quick story. He's one of the ones that made me go with Graham Alexander. Remember Grezza? Yeah, in the yo-yo test, me and him like literally just ran against each other for however long. Because Lee Grant, he always wait for the goalkeepers to go out. So obviously, big Brian Jensen drops out
huge
straight away. So you're buzzing. And then like you're running and you start to turn. There's 4 of you left. You're like, oh, who's left in here? So it's me, Greza, and then I look and it's Lee Grant, and I'm like, you're a goalie.
Why are you running?
Yeah, why are you still in? He's still running. Charlie's on the floor, doubled up. But yeah, so I played with Lee Grant. Absolute athlete, man. Really, really is. But yeah, he would be Asmir Begovic in goal.
Did Asmir Begovic score nearly as many goals as you?
Oh, potentially.
Did he not score in the Premier League?
Yeah, he did. That probably counts some more as well.
Scored at once, doesn't
I think so.
Yeah, that
so.
probably counts like 5 or 6.
There you go. More of a goal threat than you.
Can't believe you're just digging it.
Save the best till last.
Yeah, that's
Wrap the podcast now, it's done.
Yeah, exactly, he's done with me now.
So go a defender, 2 midfielders and a striker.
Oh, one defender.
Go 1 defender.
Definitely not John Guthrie. Because of what Jermaine what Jermaine Defoe did to him. Brilliant. That goal is like however many goals he had scored, that was like the milestone.
Absolutely sensational.
So, every year it comes up and every year I send it to Guffers and every year he sends me back a middle finger. So I can't go with him. Do you know what I want to go with? Just because the way his career is going now, Nicky Devlin.
Love that.
Yeah, really, really annoying guy because when Aberdeen win, every time he sends me a selfie. So I've not heard from him.
Not had one in a few weeks in.
Yeah, exactly. So if I don't win the next game, I'm going to send a selfie of me. But yeah, I'm going Nicky Devlin. I thought he was brilliant at Livy. Probably should have been in and around the Scotland squad then, but we always know what happens. You know, you move clubs and then all of a sudden you're going to play. Yeah, exactly. So we'll go with him. Nicky, again, really good character. You know, would tackle himself if he could. Absolute madman. So have him at the back. Got good pace as well. Guffers can't really run. So you'd always need covering from
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, me or someone else. Midfield, Pitts. I'd go with Pitts, definitely. He'll just do all the running. Wouldn't argue with anyone. Yeah, exactly. Run forward and back and just be absolutely everywhere. We'll go with him. McGinn, he'll be the other one in midfield. He can use his butt to hold people off. And he's got a few tricks as well. Yeah. The old, butt turn. Or the button roll. Yeah, everything involved with the button, isn't he? And then him and Pitts...
What he does in the house is up to him.
Yeah, exactly. Him and Pitts will be fine together. So we'll work with those two. 2 strikers. Big Dykesy. Go with Big Linden. Can we play diagonals in 5-a-side? Yeah, we can play.
Of course you can.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
When you're that tall, I think you'll find them.
Yeah, exactly. Big Dykesy will go up front again, come in from Queen of the South and just kicked on again. Another really, really good character. Done brilliantly for Livingston and obviously goes down to QPR and at Birmingham now and Scotland. Yep. You know, who'd have ever thought he'd play for Scotland, play international football and at Livingston. So yeah, go with him as well.
See when he first came in, did you ever envisage that he would go on to have as much as an impact as he's had for the national team?
No. The short answer was I didn't. Lyndon's actually at fault for me having my first argument with Davey. I remember we were doing...
I was going to ask you about this story, but...
Yeah, we were doing some shape work, and it was weird to me because, like, Dykes was basically pressing the back four, the opposition, who was going to be whoever we were playing at the weekend, and I was like, he can't just keep pressing by himself, like, we have to jump up, like, we're too deep. Davey just went mental. Honestly, he just went mental and started shouting and coming towards me. I was like, oh no, here we go. I was thinking to myself, I should just let Dykesy just run, man. It wasn't me having to do the run.
Just kill him.
Yeah, I was just chilling here. But that was like typical Davey. Davey would shout at me and then he would be like, no, that probably got a point with that. Yeah, probably can get a little bit higher. So yeah, you just kind of got used to Davey shouting at you, but then he would calm down and he'd be like, no, let's do this and this. And yeah, but Dykesy was honestly a man mountain. Brilliant trainer as well. Real physical boy. And I didn't envisage him to have the career he has. I really, really didn't. Yeah. Almost thought he'd have been better like as a throwback in like 4-4-2 days where you had like big man, little big man. Yeah. Oh, he would have, his career would have been probably even higher than it's been now. And don't get me wrong, he's had an unbelievable career and ever so proud of him. But yeah, he gets into the 5-a-side team because we're just going to smash the ball up to him.
Like it.
He's my other striker. 5-a-side, I'm going to go Danny Ings because Charlie's a bit clumbersome. Yeah, I can't have him and Dykesy up front together. It's not really going to work. Go Danny Ings. Like again, he could be the little one that nips in and around things, and played with him at Burnley again, and then obviously international football. He went on to be in and around the England squad as well. So him and Dykesy would be a good pair.
It's a very good side.
Go with those
very good side. We'll wrap it there then, gents. Marv, thank you very much.
No bother, mate.
Absolute privilege.
No bother.
Thanks for doing it.
Just be on
for
time
us.
next time, all right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry if I turned up late. This is episode 2 of Down the Vale. As I say, we are here at Taylor Talks Trades. You can check out all the stuff below. Huge thanks.
No bother. Cheers, gentlemen.
Thanks, man. Can you?
Cheers.